to do is come over here to where level 4 as well as level 5 is located. And that's underneath the floor plans in the project browser. Now, level 4 and level 5 are really badly named. Level 4 is our roof level. Level 5 is the top of parapet, which means the top of where these walls are located at. So let's rename these to correspond with what these levels actually are. To do that, highlight on level 4, right-click on it, and then go to Rename. From here, type in Roof and click on OK. When it asks, would you like to rename the corresponding level and views, just tell it yes. By doing this, you're renaming the ceiling plan for that level to be called Roof. Now, realistically, we'll probably never place the ceiling on that level, but that's what it's doing. For level 5, do the same thing. Highlight it, right-click, and then go to Rename. And we're just going to call this TOP for top of parapet, and click on OK. Hit yes. We can see it's renamed underneath ceiling plans as well. Now, because this is going to be a roof plan, at least for the main roof, we're going to double-click on the word roof underneath floor plans. And now we're in the roof plan view. Currently, we're looking down and we can see some walls. We're going to draw our roof in all the way around the perimeter here. To accomplish that, we need to activate the Roof tool from underneath the Architecture tab on the ribbon. Select on Roof, and before you do your first click, there's an option here that says Define Slope. This is going to be a flat roof. We don't want to have any slope, so clear that checkbox out. Next, over here toward the right-hand side, and most likely you won't have this box. If you do, click on the word Draw. What you probably see is this dialog box right here, in which case you want to select Line off of the list, because we're going to draw lines that will indicate where the perimeter of our roof is going to be. Let's start picking points. So I'm going to click once, I'm going to come down to the bottom and click, come over and click. As much as possible, grabbing the intersections of each of these spots, going straight over. I'm going to come over and click. You want to right to the inside of this wall. Continuing the click all the way on around until we come back to our original point. After connecting all these points and we have this pink, purple, and magenta line going all the way around, this is going to be the perimeter of our roof. And we'll want to click the big green check mark to that. Next, let's take a look at this in a 3D view so we have a better idea as to what just occurred. Here we can see we have the roof. Unfortunately, though, it now has walls coming up through the top of it. Now that's okay with these walls over here, but it's not something I want to have in these different wall conditions here. What we're going to do is we're going to pick each of these walls, and by holding down the Control key on your keyboard, you can highlight each of these interior walls. The next thing we'll want to do is bring these walls down so they're at the underside of this roof. You want to come over to the Attach Top Base tool that shows up here on the ribbon. Select Attach Top Base, move down, and then when the roof itself is highlighted, click on the roof. This will automatically drop the top of those walls down so that they're flush with the bottom of this roof. By going through these steps, and probably the most important step was when we clicked on Roof, clearing the Define Slope checkbox, that meant that we would have a flat roof when we were done. So by going up to Architecture and selecting on Roof, defining the perimeter and where we want to place the roof at, and ultimately clicking the big green check mark, you can many residential buildings today. And that goes from here, will slope up, come to a point, and then slope back down again. To accomplish this, we need to go to a level where we're going to place the roof. In this case, level 2 is probably going to make the most sense for us. So double click where level 2 is at, then zoom in to the garage area. Once you've zoomed into the garage area, come underneath the Architecture tab and pick the Roof tool. When you activate the Roof tool, we have a couple different things that we should think about. The first thing is underneath Properties here, which type of roof do we want to place over our garage? And you notice that currently it's set as being a generic 12-inch roof. That's pretty thick. So let's pick on the type selector list and see if there's anything else here that makes more sense. Probably the one that does in this case is going to be the wood rafter 8-inch asphalt shingles insulated. Come up here to edit type, move up here to edit structure, and when you do this, you can see each layer of material that makes up this roof. If you wanted to change any of these layers of materials, you could do that at this time, including the thickness as well as the material involved with it. Now, click on OK. Click on OK. Now we're going to start to draw this roof in. Move over here to Define Slope and put a check mark next to Define Slope. This slope is only going to be effective for two sides. So after we draw two lines, we're going to clear this checkbox out. The two sides that are going to have a slope will be this side, that's going to slope up, and then this side, because it's going to slope up in this direction. And they're going to meet at a point right down the middle of the building. Also, we're going to have a 2-foot overhang here. Make sure that the Pick Walls tool is selected off of the ribbon, and then highlight over one of the walls. Make sure that the dashed line is on the outside of the wall. If it's on the inside, it's not going to work because it's going to drain the roof directly into your garage. So make sure this dashed line is on the outside, that's the 2-foot overhang, and then click. When you do this, we can see that it's going to start off as being a 9/12 sloped roof. We could have that, but frankly, I don't want anything that's that steep. That's a pretty steep roof. Let's change that to be a 4/12 slope roof, then clicking out in space to finish that command. Now we're going to do the same thing over on the other side, making sure the dashed line is on the outside of the building. Click on the dimension and changing it to a 4-inch. Now this is the important part. Clear a defined slope out because we do not want a slope that comes in this direction or in this direction. We just want this to be a triangular pointed gable end. So click on this wall, making sure the dashed line's on the outside, as well as this wall, with the dashed line being on the outside. When you've done that, then select on the big green check mark. Now, if you get a message saying, do you want to connect the walls to the roof? Then just say no to that message for right now, and you'll be in the exact same spot that we're at currently. Take a look at this in 3D. You'll see that your walls are in fact going through your roof, and definitely not the way that you want it to be. To fix this, click on each of these walls. And while there's a variety of ways to select multiple walls, the easiest for right now would just be to hold the Tab key down on your keyboard as you select on each of the walls. Once they're all highlighted, come up to Attach Top Base, select on that command off of the ribbon, and then pick on the roof. It's given a warning message, but its complaint is the fact that it can't create that top cap at the top of the wall. It's also having a problem with the brick soldier course that was at the top of the wall. I don't really care about that detail in this design, so we're just going to click the red X to get out of the warning box, click out in space to finish off the command. Then if we rotate this around by holding down the Shift key on the keyboard and the wheel on the mouse, we can see that this now has a gabled roof and the walls are cleaning up fine at that roof surface. So to draw the gable, just remember, whenever you're executing the roof command, put a check mark next to Define Slope. For each side you want to have slope. You have a couple different ways. You can either execute the roof command off of the Architecture tab up above, or just select on one of the roofs that are already there in the project. In this case, I'm selecting on the roof that's over this garage area over here on the side. And we can see that it's a basic roof, wood rafter, 8-inch. If we click on the type selector list, we can see a list of all the different roofs that are currently loaded into this project. Some of these are generic, which means they only have one material, and it's just a generic material, so it has no real material properties associated with it. Other things, such as the concrete deck, have concrete material or steel material associated with the steel truss. The slope glazing, it has glass material associated with it. If you have a roof that's sloping and it's made out of a glass panel, that's how you create it, with a sloping glazing of the roof. But let's take a look here at the properties of this basic roof wood rafter. Just click somewhere near your drawing area and select on the Edit Type button. When you do this, you'll see the Type Properties dialog box. Click on Edit next to Structure, you'll get Edit Assembly. This has the thicknesses of each material that make up your roof. If you want to change the thickness of any of these materials, simply highlight in the box, type in the number you'd like it to be, and click in another box, and it will make that change. I'm going to change this back to 7.5 inches, and then just click back in the box. So these roofs are constructed underneath Edit Type in the Properties, and then I'm going to click OK to this dialog box, selecting on the Edit button next to Structure to get to the Edit Assembly dialog box which has each of the roof materials as well as the thickness of each of those materials. Inside of Revit, it's not underneath floor plans that we need to be looking, but we need to look underneath ceiling plans. And in this case, double click on level 1 to bring it up. It's technically called the reflected ceiling plan, looking straight up in level 1. If we zoom out just a little bit, we'll see this building over here on the right-hand side. This is our little garage area that we have sort of out in the back of the building. This line going right down the middle is the peak or the gable there on the roof that's covering that garage. What we're seeing here in this view is that currently there are no ceilings in place. Those still need to be drawn. But this wide area is actually the underside of the floor for the level up above, so that we have a better idea as to what it is that we're looking at when we're looking at a ceiling plan. Come underneath Properties, scroll down, and toward the bottom of the Properties list, there'll be an option there called View Range. Select on the Edit button next to View Range. We'll see a primary range option, and we'll see a cut plane as well as a top plane. Right now, it says that 7'6" off of level 1 is where we're cutting through the floor plan at. So imagine if your head was at 7'6" up in the air and you're looking straight up. That's exactly what's happening here. Then the top is level 2 above, 0 feet 0 inches. So at exactly level 2, that's as far up as we can see. If we wanted to see beyond or be able to see up higher than level 2, we could either change this information here, or we could select another level that was even higher up on the list. If we wanted to be able to see below where the cut plane is at, we could change this offset distance so it's a smaller number, and then we'd be able to see further down and be able to catch more things which might be lower than the cut plane. So the reflected ceiling plan, or just called ceiling plan, if I click on OK, is looking up as opposed to looking down like you'd have. So we're going to learn how to place ceilings in our reflected ceiling plane views. To do this, of course, we need to be inside of a reflected ceiling plan. Make sure that underneath the project browser that you're currently underneath level 1 ceiling plans. Probably the most common mistake is if someone tries to place a ceiling and they do it inside of a floor plan by accident, because initially they look almost identical. Well, if you try to do that, it will place the ceiling in, but you won't be able to see it. What happens is it'll show up on the reflected ceiling plan because in the ceiling plan, you're looking up, but the reason why you can't see it in the floor plan views, because in floor plan views, you're looking down. So always place your ceilings initially inside of a ceiling plan view. Now, we're going to place a ceiling inside of this office area between A and B. To do that, we need to come underneath the Architecture tab and select on Ceiling. When we do, we need to look underneath Properties to see which type of ceiling it's going to place inside the space. In this case, it's a 2x4 ACT, acoustical tile system ceiling. Also, we can see the height, and in this case, it's 8 foot. So if we place it in here currently, it'll be 8 foot off of level 1, or 8 foot off of ground. In this case, I'd like it to be at least a little bit higher than 8 foot off of the ground. So I'm going to type in 9 foot, and we'll have a 9-foot ceiling inside of this office space. Now, if you move your cursor into this area, you'll see a red line showing up around the office walls. This is a good thing. This is where it's going to try to place the ceiling into. Up here, you'll see that it says Automatic Ceiling. What's actually going on here is that it's finding where those outside walls are at, and it's automatically placing this ceiling inside of this space. So it's making this decision for you. Do you want to place it inside of this space, or inside of this space, or inside of this space? In this case, yes, we want to place it inside of the office area. And by just clicking, we've now placed a 9-foot elevation acoustical tile system inside of the room. Now I'm going to do the same thing, except over in these two spaces here. But these are going to be restrooms, and frankly, I don't really want to have ACT inside of my restrooms. I want a different kind of material. So I'm going to pick this gypboard material, the GWB on metal stud. And I'm going to change the height offset from being 9 foot to 8'6". So I'll have a little bit lower ceilings inside of here. Now just click to place and do one more time over in the next restroom. Initially, it looks like nothing has happened, but that's because in Revit, by default, and this can be changed, the gypboard ceilings don't have a pattern associated with them. Now it can be assigned any pattern that you want it to have, so it looks like a bunch of little dots or maybe triangles or something along those lines. With that being said, though, in order to see if these ceilings actually were placed, one trick is to move down here, highlight over visual style, and then change the visual style to be shaded. When you do, you should see this get a lot darker where that ceiling is going to be placed at. As a result of this, you know that you're going to have ceiling inside of both of those spaces. Next, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to select on yet a different type of ceiling. I can do the generic, or in this case, I think I'm just going to pick on this 2x2 ACT system. And I'd really like to place it inside of this room, but I can see that I'm going to have a problem. I only want it inside of this space right here, not have it fill up this entire space out here. So to accomplish that, I'm going to have to sketch my ceiling in. So I'm going to come up here to Sketch and select on Sketch. Then I'm going to pick my draw tools and use my line work to draw around where I want the boundary for my ceiling to be. One quick tip, if you move over here, just highlight over the intersection and move out, you'll get this dashed line. When you do that, you know that you're straight across from that wall. Move across, click, come back up, and click again. Now at the 8'6" height, I'm going to have this 2x2 tile put in here and click the big green check mark to finish that off. I'm going to click out here in the white area. And now we can see we have ceiling in each of these spots. Now I'd like to go through the same process one more time, except in this case, I'm going to put a ceiling in this spot here. And I do want it to be gypboard again. I'm going to do one more ceiling. Going to choose the GWB, the gypsum wallboard ceiling. One thing of interest, you can see if I click right now, it's going to put a ceiling right into this space. The problem is it'll try to cover up this ceiling here. But really I have one of two different options. I can either use sketch ceiling and take the time to pick each and every one of these walls, or to speed things up, choose the automatic ceiling, accept this height offsets. 8'6" sounds good to me right now. Click right inside the space. We can see this is all turned gray. But even though this pattern hasn't changed, I can tell you that there's actually two ceilings inside of this space. I'm going to hit Escape right now. Now I'm going to put my mouse over the edge of where I know a corner of the ceiling is at. I'm going to select on the Tab key to try to select my different ceilings. Now in this case, actually my ceiling is coming in here, so I need to pick a different edge. I'm going to pick the edge right here. I'm going to click the Tab key until just that ceiling highlights. And you can see that in the lower left-hand side of the screen, it'll say ceilings, compound ceilings on the gray bar going across the bottom. When you click, it'll highlight. You can then do an edit boundary to this. And at this point, it gets easy. It's all you need to do is use your draw tools, pick a line, and draw one line over. You escape a couple of times. Highlight on each of these lines, click the delete key to get rid of these extra lines. And with this final line, you can select on it, click the dot, and pull it straight down, and click the big green check mark whenever you're done. When you do that, you'll then have a ceiling just in those areas. And even though that seemed like there was a lot of clicks, there was a lot less than clicking each and every spot, going all the way around the room until you went all the way around in a circle. Now we have a ceiling in each of these areas, and we'll be able to see that, particularly over here, if we double click on this circular area here, which is a section going through our space. This is a section. I'm going to click right here on the visual styles and turn this to shaded. And here's that ceiling, and here's the floor up above. We can see the space in between those areas. And we can see, may they be walls or floors or roofs, many things inside of Revit are made up of multiple layers and materials. To take a look at how a ceiling is put together, let's zoom in here on our reflected ceiling plane view. In this case, it's a reflected ceiling plane view for level 1. Click on one of the individual lines that makes up the ceiling tile. Now go over to Properties and select Edit Type. You can then select on Edit next to the word Structure. This is going to show each of the layers of material that make up this particular ceiling. The structure is 1 5/8 inches thick. And the finished material is an acoustical ceiling material that's 5/8 of an inch thick. If we change the thicknesses here, it would change the actual thicknesses of how the ceiling is modeled. We can find the total thickness up here as these dimensions together. Now I'm going to select on OK and OK to get out of this particular dialog box. And instead, I'm going to move my cursor over and I'm going to hit the Tab key right here and continue to click on Tab until I can select this individual ceiling that's here inside of a restroom area. Now, once it's highlighted, it has a blue line going around it. Click the highlighted and select on Edit Type. Come up to Edit next to Structure, and we can see 3 5/8 inch metal stud layer for the structure and gypsum wallboard of 5/8 inch thickness, as well as the total thickness showing up here. If we wanted to add an extra layer of material, we could click the Insert button. If we wanted to delete a layer of material, we could highlight it, and I'm not going to actually click it, but we could hit the Delete button to get rid of the extra layer of material. If we want to put it in a different order, we could click either up or down to move it up or down on the list. In this case, the gypsum wallboard doesn't have an actual material finish showing up for it. It's showing up in gray, but it doesn't have little dots indicating that this is a gypboard ceiling, and I'd like to give that to it. I'm going to select on where it has gypsum wall and click the little button right next to it. And this will bring up the material browser. We can see gypsum wallboard is highlighted. There's a cut pattern that looks like sand, but I'd really like a surface pattern to look like sand too. So where it has pattern and none, click inside of that box and then try to find a sand pattern. So that it shows up really nice, I'm going to pick sand dense. Click on OK. Now it's going to display this pattern, and the pattern is going to be black, like the little dots show up here, because the color here is black. Now, click on OK. Click on OK again, and OK. It's a little hard to see, but we can start to see those speckles showing up there on the ceiling. And if we move down to the bottom and choose Hidden Line, we can see little gray or black speckles all throughout these locations where we have a gypboard ceiling in place. So to modify the materials that might be associated with our ceilings, simply either select on the ceiling or activate the ceiling command, come into Edit Type. I'm going to pick on Edit Structure, and from here you could add, subtract materials, as well as change their thicknesses. Also, you can adjust what it is they actually do, so you could tell it your structural or your finished material, all through the Edit Assembly dialog. To light fixture, you need to come underneath the Architecture tab, and you'll notice that there are no light tools showing up here. To place a light, you need to come underneath your components here on the type selector list to be able to click and see if there are any lights loaded into your project. We're going to need to load in some lights into our project environment. Select on Load Family on the ribbon. It should take you to whatever your default directory is. In most cases, it's going to be the US Imperial Directory. And we're going to be looking for lighting. Double-click to open up lighting. From here, it's broken up into 2 individual categories. There's going to be architectural and then MEP. The only difference really between architectural and MEP is that MEP has little connectors associated with it that allow you to connect wire to them. So if you want to take it back to your circuit, you can. If you're doing architectural work though, you're best served to just open up the architectural environment. You'll see external lights versus internal lights. This is inside of a building, so we're going to do internal. Here we see a variety of different lights, and if we highlight on one, and if you pick the down arrow on your keyboard, you'll be able to scroll through all these different variations of lights that come with the Revit software. Now the one that I want to pick is going to be that it's Troffer Light 2x4 Parabolic. Select on Open to that. Then move your mouse over into that area where we can place this light in. What these lights will try to do is they'll try to place themselves automatically along this ceiling. Depending on what kind of light family it is, and that's what these are called, or families, some will like to be placed along the surface of a ceiling, others will like to be embedded into the ceiling. And it just comes down to what type of light they are and what it is that they're supposed to do. One thing that you'll notice is that this light fixture is right on the center of where my cursor is at. Unfortunately, that makes it pretty much impossible for me to snap to any spot along the grid. So to place this, my own trick is to come in the general area where you want it to be. In this case, I'm going to put the light right inside of this square that I'm circling myself around. But since I can't click on an intersection to place it very easily, I'm just going to click once right here. And I'm going to hit escape a couple of times to get out of the insertion command. Now, select on that light fixture, right on the edge will work, and come up here to this command here. It's called the rotate command. For the angle, we're going to type in 90. We're going to rotate it around 90 degrees. Then click the enter key on the keyboard. See how it spun it around 90 degrees at that time? Once the light has been highlighted and rotated around, come up here and select on not the rotate command, but on the move command now. When you pick on move, you can pick an intersection, in this case, the corner of that light fixture. And you'll also be able to move over and pick the intersection of where those two lines come together. And as a result of that, if you hit escape a couple of times, you'll now be able to place that light fixture directly on the ceiling grid where it belongs. If they happen to not be lined up exactly where you want them to be, if you select on one of the individual lines, you can either use the move command to move the grid over, or you can even use the arrow keys on your keyboard to nudge it over. And you'll notice that your light fixtures will follow that particular ceiling grid, no matter if you nudge it up. Obviously, we want to have more lights than just this one inside of this room. So in order to put multiple lights, we can either do the copy command or we can do the array command. To do copy, all you need to do is select on one of the lights. Move up to the little copy icon up at the top of the screen, select on it. If you want to do more than one copy, put a check mark here in multiple. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. Now I'm going to make some copies going over in this direction. To start, I'm going to pick the intersection of where this light hits these lines. Now I'm going to make two copies, one to here, and then another one there. And technically, I can continue this copy process on, so I can just keep going click, click, click at each intersection to drop them in. But another option that I have is to use the array command instead. I just hit escape a couple of times to get out of the command. I'm going to zoom further back in. And now I'm going to do what's considered a window around each of these three fixtures. Move your mouse to right about where my cursor is at. Click, hold the mouse button down, and drag a window around those three fixtures until they highlight in blue. Then let go of your mouse. When you've done that, you'll have your three different light fixtures all highlighted. Move up here to the array command. When you pick on array, there's a couple of different options that you have. One is a radial array, but the kind that you want to do is a linear array, which instead of a curve, it will do a straight line. So make sure that linear is highlighted. Come over here. How many do we want in the array? We want to have a grand total of 3 in this array. There's two options, second or last. And either one of these in this case could actually work. Second means it's going to space them the same distance apart as between the first spot that you click and the second spot that you click. If we did last, it would evenly array them between the first spot that you clicked and then the second spot that you click. So it would space them the exact same distance apart. In this case, though, I always like to use second if I can. I'm going to pick this intersection right here, move down, and then pick this intersection here. And we can see it's now arrayed them down in this direction. How many do we want in the array? I'll point out that if we change this to 2, then clicked out in the space, it would only do 2. If we clicked back on the 2 again, change that to 3, it'll now do 3. So we have a fair amount of control over this array, and it allows us to copy more than one simultaneously. So the different ways that you can copy or have multiple light fixtures inside of your design would be to either select on one of these individually and then use the copy command. And in this case, since we select all of these and did an array on it, I'll need to hit the tab key to select on this light. But then when I do, I could select on the copy command and copy it. Or you could use the array command, which is select on as many as you'd like, and then select Array, and tell it how many rows of lights you'd like to have. One last thing to know is that whenever you use the Array command, there's a good chance that they'll all be grouped together. That's the reason why we were able to click on the number 2 or the number 3 and have them all move in unison, is because they're all grouped together like that. It's always best if you decide to do an array to ungroup them whenever you're done. So you know that you have the right amount of rows. So select on those groups, and you can hold down the control key to select on multiple ones, and then come up here to ungroup each one of these. And you can now see as I highlight over it, they're no longer highlighting over all 3 of them at the same time. They're now individual light fixtures again, no longer grouped.